Do you enjoy this podcast but wish you had more weekly short doses of insights and nuggets? Well, if you didn't know, I recently launched an email newsletter where you can join and connect with a community of like-minded young women around the world, also on the journey of personal growth. This weekly email includes everything from mindful insights and finds, tips on living well, relationships, my personal experiences, and a lot more. Subscribe to get your weekly email newsletter. The link is directly in this podcast episode show notes, or you can head directly to my website at emilyelizabeth.blog and you can sign up from there. I'm Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host. And for today's solo episode, I am recording from Barcelona here in Spain. And it's actually my first time here. I've been here for the past little bit more than a week now. And I actually just came back from Venice, Italy over the weekend with my boyfriend. So I'm here with him and we're spending almost a month here, just basically basing ourselves in Barcelona and then kind of traveling, short, quick weekend trips like Venice that we just did, coming to and from Barcelona. And so it's been awesome just being here. This is something that we decided to do for his birthday. It was also just kind of on his bucket list for the year, which is to go and do something like this and live in a different city, different environment for just a few weeks. And so it's funny because we booked the Venice trip very much last minute. I'm talking like the day/night before. We booked flights and then we very much scrambled last minute to find hotel options literally the night before. Like we were flying out the following day at 6 a.m. and we were booking this stuff at like 9 p.m., which is crazy because I'm not the biggest last minute person, but when it comes to spontaneity, like I don't mind, I do enjoy this. But I wanted to share actually a quick tip about this because I've talked about it before on this podcast, which is around credit card points and travel perks. And it's funny because I'm not sponsored by anyone or anything. I do have a link in the show notes where you can actually go and apply for one of the cards I'm about to mention, but I used travel points from BILT, B-I-L-T, and also Capital One, where I actually recently got their Venture One credit card, which is amazing for travel. And I believe I had like 20,000 travel points or points in general right off the bat because of a minimum amount spending required. I clearly hit that minimum and already was able to use those points. And so funny enough for me, the trip itself, when it came to flights and like my half of the hotel, I actually used points for everything, which was super nice. Obviously my partner was probably like, damn, like lucky you. It just, again, very much something I've emphasized before when it comes to the things that you see on social media, whether it's myself or people that you follow. Oftentimes there are a lot of travel hacks going on behind the scenes, and certain travel experiences are not as pricey as you may think it is. And so I would definitely look into, especially if you're someone that's paying rent right now, seriously, you are very likely able to pay rent with the BILT credit card, especially if you're paying through any kind of like system online. Even if you need to do checks, they also do checks for you and you can still get points for it. So I know it's crazy. I was once very resistant to the idea of this credit card because I never believed in paying rent through credit card. But because I'm not actually putting it on a credit, I'm literally like, I don't want to get into details, but basically with the BILT credit card, when you're paying rent, you don't have to process it like a credit card. You can actually connect you can actually connect whatever checking or savings account you want to that credit card. And when you pay rent specifically, instead of paying with a credit card, you enter this routing and account number that they provide to you. And that information is linked to whatever your savings and checking account is. In other words, it basically withdraws like a debit card. Therefore, you don't pay off your rent later on at the end of the month, which I believe is an option. You can, but for me personally, I always want to make sure like I'm not legitimately paying for rent on or through credit, if that makes sense. So anyways, that's how I went to Venice for a more cost-effective way and didn't pay for flights or hotel. But funny enough, for today's episode, I wanted to share some thoughts around friendships and the people you choose to surround yourself with, because I had a moment over the weekend where I was very lucky to be able to connect with my friend Elia. He was on the podcast before, actually, and he's a very good friend of mine, someone I met back in 2020, so almost 4 years ago. We met at the mall out in Los Angeles, and he's actually the same friend that I met up with in Italy. If you've been following me for a while or you listened to the podcast for a while, then you probably recall that I went on a semi-solo trip to Italy last, I think it was April 2023. And I went to Rome first, and then that's where I met my friend Elia. He took a train down, and then from there we went to Naples, and then we went to Florence, and then I ended the trip in Milan, where I flew back to the States. So that was really awesome to be able to see my friend again after almost a year and a half. And this time he brought his current girlfriend, who I knew about for a while, and he also got to meet my boyfriend. And the one thing that stood out for me from this interaction, something I've been reflecting on, is just like, wow, having a friend that is willing to drive 2.5 to 3 hours to come see you. And more importantly, knowing that it's like coming to see you even with only, 1 or 2 hours of time spent. Like, we didn't even get to spend the whole day together because I unfortunately only realized the night before that he's within driving distance. And I texted him quite late, like maybe 8 p.m. And, it was a lot back and forth, and there wasn't any final plans. And it was only in the morning around 10 a.m. where he's like, okay, we're going to come see you, even though he knew that our flight, we'd be heading to the airport, around 3 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. And so, it was just very, I was in awe of the fact that I have a friend in my life that's willing to do that and willing to come see me, willing to, or clearly values relationships and connection and willing to make the time. And if you think about it, there are some people that be like, oh, like that's such a long drive or such a long travel time, and then I'm only seeing the person for like an hour or two, like we can always frame it that way. And of course, I really wished I had more time with Elia and his girlfriend, but even the 1.5 to 2 hours that we had together, it just made a whole difference in the weekend. It made a whole difference in my reflection process. And, I've always described this friend of mine, his energy, as extremely calm, stoic, and even-keeled. He's one of those people that you would rarely see frustration or deep frustration and anger from. And it's something that I've always admired about him and always was impressed with, just the way he holds himself. And he's just got a calm demeanor that really just helps the energy. Especially if things get chaotic, he stays grounded for the most part. He stays grounded, he stays stoic, he's calm in trying to figure things out. And being around that energy again, someone that's I consider one of my best friends, to be honest, even though again, like he lives in Italy right now, and we see each other at this point probably like once every 14, 15 months, it makes such a difference being around people like him. And it had me thinking about like my life over the past 5 to 7 years. I mean, which has been a short time, but also a long time. And I'm thinking back to myself in 2017 when I was a junior in college, when I was, once again, I always say this, but I was struggling so much mentally and emotionally, and I did not even like anything remotely similar. I did not have the people that I have in my life today, or the types of people that I have in my life today. I did not have the women that would just answer my text or phone call immediately if I needed something. Speaking of that, the other day I texted a girlfriend of mine, one of my best friends from college. I texted her kind of late. I texted her around like 10 p.m. and she's on Central Time. And I said, hey, are you still awake? She doesn't hesitate. She doesn't text back. She just FaceTimes me. In 2 minutes, she FaceTimed me, right? I know sometimes those friendships are rare because I can't say all my friends respond like that. Even my bestest friends, like not everyone responds like that. But this is one of those people, one of the girlfriends that has had a huge impact on my life as a friend, as a woman, as someone that I look up to in terms of her characteristics, the way she shows up as a friend and as a sister. And so I think back, you guys, to a time of my life, and maybe there are times of your life where this resonates with you, or maybe this is a time that you're going through right now, actually, whatever that may look like. But I still remember deeply how it felt in 2017, even going into 2018, how it felt to not have a single soul to really connect with on a friendship level, and a soul that really felt like they are there for you. They're willing to listen. They're willing to help you. They're willing to give you feedback. I didn't have that. And throughout the years, even once I met that college best friend and I met the people that made such a big impact in my life, there were a lot of times throughout the years where my friendships, ones that I thought were solid, they ebbed and flowed, And the more I think about why and how I feel grounded in not only who I am today, but where I'm at in my life, I mean it from the bottom of my heart that so much of that groundedness is also coming from knowing that I have community and incredible connections in my life with people like Elia who are willing to still keep in touch with me frequently, despite the distance where I'm still in the States and he's in Italy, and him to make the time to come see me and come catch up with me, even for a short period of time. And then on the other hand, to have a friend that will drop anything to, or not anything, but you guys know what I mean, to drop what she's doing and call me because she senses that I might need her. And during the times that I didn't have these relationships in my life yet, it felt lonely. I felt misunderstood. I felt like I had no one to go to. And this is, way back in college. And again, I'm thinking about over the years, like the building blocks of what I've done to attract and keep these types of people in my life. And I'm also especially sharing this for those of you who are interested in cultivating more of this in your life. Like, I'm talking friendships of all kinds of people, the really strong ones, and even the ones that are like, you're not best friends with, but maybe you spend enough time with them where their energy makes an impact on you, right? Number one, it's about showing up how you want to be treated and showing up as the friend that you want to have in your life. Because what's interesting is that when you do so, sooner or later, you will repel the people that don't have the ability to show up that way in your life. Maybe it's because it's just mixed match in values, mixed match in perception of the world and how to show up. Like, I can even say that my approach is very different from a parent of mine, where this parent, it's my mom, we have very different views on how to show up in friendship and how to maintain relationships, because in certain cultures, being vulnerable and open, which builds connection, is extremely taboo. Whereas for me, I'm considered, in her eyes, too open and too much of an open book per se for maybe even sharing this kind of stuff with you guys. And the difference is I'm not just a free open book, but rather I'm intentionally open about being who I am, being, I hate the word, but authentically and true to who I am, in order to receive, not because of the intention is to receive another person's energy that is similar, but rather is my intention in my relationships and in my day-to-day life is to truly live life in the most Emily way possible, in the way that makes the most sense to me, and of course, while respecting my values, morals, and principles, right? Like, what does that look like? And time again, when I set the intention back in 2017, when I was struggling with having and finding female and honestly even male friendships, not that that was something I was looking for, right? Because I do have, just a select few men, including Elia, that are very close to me, people that have served as a brother to me and do continue to serve as someone consider like a brother. But I set the intention that year, after feeling so empty and alone, I said to myself that I am going to go seek this out, and I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to show up this way without hesitation, and I'm going to go through this hard period and allow myself to soak that in and live through it. It's something that I basically, listened to when Ryan Holiday, there's a book that he wrote called The Obstacle is the Way. And I never physically read it, but I listened to the audiobook many times. And that was one of the books that I listened to that year, which is acknowledging that the only way through whatever I'm going through is going through and navigating the obstacle itself. And in that process, now speaking, 7 years later, it's the reason why I have the friendships and the relationships I have today. It's actually the purpose of this podcast as well. One of the key messages I talk about in creating a fulfilling life in whatever it is that you do, whether you are a career woman or you don't want to be a career woman, whether you play sports or you don't, or whatever it is, however you live life. The key theme and the key foundation that I'm a firm believer in and have been a firm believer in since college is that a meaningful life is nothing without the relationships and connections we have, especially to one another and to ourselves. I would encourage you to think about that today and throughout this week. If this is something, whether you need it right now or not, if this is something that in general you want an abundance of the types of people that you really feel you're I know what Emily means when she's talking about these people are ride or die. These are types of people that just feed and fuel my energy in a positive way. If you want to be surrounded by more people like that, what do you need to do differently? What do you need to do differently in the way you show up, the way you speak to friends, the way you treat other people, the way you take initiative in even reaching out to people, right? You have to take accountability for what's in your control, and most importantly, for your own life. No one is going to just come to your footstep and be like, hey, I would love to be friends. I'm also looking for more, like-minded women who also share these values. And, it doesn't just come around like that. You also have to show up in the way that naturally attracts those types of people. And trust me, I even went through a friendship falling out, I guess you could call that, not too long ago. This was probably a couple months ago now. And I remember the first day when the way things were being handled, I was like really bummed because I don't face this often. And I don't face situations like that often because, number one, I often select people in my life that would handle things differently. And number two, I just rarely have conflict with friends, period. And so when this occurred with this person and they handled it in a abrupt, reactive, maybe slightly defensive way, in such way that it led to blocking and, being very short and I think even blocking phone numbers as well, like things like that. Some people have an approach where it's like block, you're out of my life, whatever. To each their own, right? And some people also have an approach where there's dialogue, there is addressing the issue, there's addressing and communicating, if and when like feelings were hurt, whatever that is. And so you really have to also accept that throughout the years and in the process, as you're building your life, as you're finding the people that really connect with you, you also gotta be ready to accept that not everyone will hit and match in the same way. Some will last many years and a lifetime. Some will last only maybe a year or two, and that's okay. But the reason why I wasn't as affected by that, especially at this time in my life, is because I am much more aware of myself now than I was even 3 years ago, and much more grounded in knowing that, hey, I really do make efforts to show up as the type of person that I want other people to show up for me as, and my surrounding and the way they show up for me, just like the way, my friend FaceTimed me, or the way Elia drove all the way 3 hours to Venice, Italy, those efforts speak at the very least to some degree on how I have shown up for them and why it matters for them. And so that's often a great way to observe as well. Is it me? Because you always have to check, really take accountability on where you fall short and where you go wrong. That's something that I really try to focus on, because I know that if I go through life always thinking I'm right and always thinking that there's nothing I could have done, well, then that means I'm saying I'm not in the driver's seat of my own life, and I know that's not true. But at the same time, there are moments where it's like you have maxed out everything you could have done, and the rest is just, out of your control, and perhaps it's because of another person or just because of the situation. And so again, I encourage you guys to think about some of this, think about the people in your life, think about how you want certain people to show up for you, and most importantly, think about how you can do better to show up for those in your life right now and to show up for those who would want to come into your life. Thank you for tuning in to today's Tuesday episode here from Barcelona. I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, I'm really intrigued when I learn about different topics or different episodes that hit home for you. So if this one in particular really hit home in any way, please be sure to actually tell me. I love chatting with you guys over Instagram DMs. You can find me at Emily E. Duong or at What Fulfills You on Instagram. All of those are linked in the show notes. And for the card game, all of the fun merch, the hoodie, the hats, which are almost selling completely out now. You can find them all online at whatfulfillsyou.com. Thanks again for tuning in today. I would chat with you all next time.